Hello Fear Seekers, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be diving into some disturbing, allegedly true, Ouija board horror stories. If you enjoy the content and want to help the channel grow, consider leaving a like and subscribing to keep up with future videos. Now without further ado, sit back, put your planchettes away, and get ready to ferment your fears. When I was younger, my mom would leave me home with my older brothers. As soon as she would leave, they would pull out a hidden Ouija board and play around with it. Of course, I wasn't allowed to be a part of the game. I was probably around 6 or 7, and they were in their late teens. I can remember so vividly these memories. Mom left, and the boys went into a bedroom off the kitchen where the board was hidden. They closed the door behind them, and I was left watching cartoons by myself in the living room. The bedroom door had a gap under it, about 1.5 inches tall, and I would sometimes quietly go lay on the floor and watch them play it through the gap. I can remember them making contact with the spirit one night, and they asked its name, to which it replied, Tobias. Each time they played after that, it always seemed to be Tobias reaching out. For about a week, they conversed with the spirit, and nothing out of the ordinary seemed to come from it. However, one night as I was watching them, the board started talking about me. My brothers would always write down the things being communicated and read them aloud, which made it easy for me to eavesdrop on them. As I lay there on the kitchen floor looking under the door, the game became active and my brothers started writing. I saw both of them make eye contact and look at each other confused. My oldest brother said, "It said we are being watched." As they looked around the room, I snuck back to my cartoons. They opened the door and checked on me, then went back into the room. I creeped back over and watched some more. This time, the board used my name. I recall my brother saying, "It says she needs to go away." I could feel the blood leave my face. I knew my brothers hadn't seen me watching. I got up and pretended to be sleeping on the couch, and eventually just fell asleep there. I was awoken in the middle of the night by a strange sound, kind of like the sound a cat makes in its throat when it's mad. I sat up and cleaned the sleep from my eyes. I sat there in the dark for a moment, and it seemed so quiet in the house. I was getting ready to get up and go to the bathroom, but I felt like I couldn't stand up, almost like something was pushing down on my shoulders. Suddenly, it was like I was in a wind tunnel. I remember my mother's sheer curtains were whirling around, and it felt like they filled the room. I felt so dizzy, and then it just stopped. I don't remember going to sleep at all, but I woke up on the same couch and it was daylight out. I have never spoken about this to anyone, but the story doesn't end there. My brothers continued to mess around with the board, which I was no longer wanting to be around. It got to the point that weird things were happening to them too. They would talk about it amongst themselves, and I would play oblivious. One night, my brothers walked out of the bedroom with a rolled-up sheet and scissors. They told me they would be right back and walked out the door. I later learned the next morning that the board had said something that really frightened them, so they took it down the road to the old iron bridge near our house to cut it up and throw it over. We were all sitting in the kitchen eating breakfast when we heard a loud crash outside. We ran out to see a car had wrecked on the bridge. My brothers were sure it was because of the Ouija spirit they thought they had disposed of the night before. The person who wrecked happened to be a person my brother went to school with. He told my brother that he wrecked because as he was driving over the bridge, a demon-like figure appeared next to him in the car. He later found a piece of the board in his car, and nobody knows how it got there. So, back in 2012, I lived on my own at the sweet age of 19. One day, a maid and I thought it would be a good idea to do a Ouija board. Now, I am an open-minded skeptic. Ouija boards to me are kinda you know? Anyway, my friend and I were doing this Ouija board. We were speaking to an evil spirit apparently, wanting me to move out or it'll kill me. Nonsense, right? That was what I thought. A couple days go by. Now, for me to explain this properly, my bedroom window was huge but separated into 3 parts, and outside that window was a porch sitting 2 or so meters off the ground. One night, I had my 2 brothers come over who were 9 and 10 at the time. They liked the idea of playing murder in the dark, so we did. They hid, I faced the front door and counted. While I was counting, I felt someone right behind me, enough to feel it breathing down my neck. Now, I'm quite short. My 10-year-old brother was just about taller than me. I had him. He thought he would scare me when I turned around. Pfft, idiot. So I counted my last number. I turn around and go, "Ah!" to scare what I thought was my 10-year-old brother. Nope. I froze. I saw a shadow of something. I brushed it off, as I often do. Then, the TV turns on. Okay, no worries. I turn it off, continue the game until I find my brothers. Later that night, my mum picked up my brothers and I went to bed, so I was alone. I fall asleep soundly. Later on, I shot awake to the sound, so loudly, of something from under the porch. Bang, bang, bang. I look out my window from my bed. I could see outside through these blinds, but you couldn't see from the outside in. There was nothing, but something told me not to go outside. So I lay back down, staring at the roof, trying to think of any explanation. And then, a bit softer, but still hard enough. Bang, bang, bang. I look up again. Nothing. I sit on the edge of my bed to see if someone was hiding next to my window or something. I wait for a few minutes, I'd say. Then 3 of the quickest, loudest, most aggressive knocks I've ever heard came from under that porch. Bang, bang, bang. My eyes wide, mind scrambled. I sat. I didn't know what to do. So, like the idiot I am, I went back to sleep. I wasn't giving whatever this was my fear. Nothing else happened. That night. My story doesn't really have a beginning. There are fragments scattered throughout my whole life, moments of clairvoyance that I have never been able to explain. When I was a child, I had a neighbor who was rather old. They were very sick and living out their last days in a house a couple of houses away from mine. The night before they died, I dreamed of ambulances and watching from my window as my neighbor was rolled out on a stretcher. I was 5 years old at this point and did not know this neighbor was suffering from extreme respiratory failure. I woke up sobbing to my mom and told her to go over to my neighbor's house and check on them. She soothed me back to sleep, telling me it was just a dream, but I woke up to the sound of sirens the next morning. I rushed to my window to see the exact scene from my dream playing out. For years, I have received visions and have had a connection to the spirit world. My parents are divorced, and when my father remarried and bought a new house with his new wife, apparently the first thing I said about the house was that it was dark. I was 9 years old. In that house, I immediately felt the presence of 3 spirits: an old woman, a little boy, and something inhuman. The neighbor kids all told me the house was built by a young man for his mother who had bone cancer. He built it so she could sit and look at the mountains from the bedroom he had built her. When she died, he apparently took his own life in our basement. His whole life was in that house, and he hadn't yet prepared for the worst. Her death overwhelmed him into a state of shock and depression, so he ran to the basement and ended it. Being the youngest of 4, I was stuck with the sick room, and for a while it never got bad. I knew the old woman was in the room, but she was never a menacing presence. I saw her for the first time when I was 11, sitting in a chair in my room in the middle of the day, staring out the window at the mountains. When my older sister moved away to college, we drew straws to see who got a room in the basement. At this point, I was 15, and the basement room was perfect for sneaking out among the other rebellious teenager things you can do when your parents are sleeping 2 floors above you. I got the basement room, and for a while it was perfect. At this time in my life, I had pushed down all of my clairvoyant visions and sensitivity to the spirit world to make room for boys and school and musical theater. Every single night in that basement, though, I heard someone at exactly 2:47 a.m. run down the stairs and start running around the basement. The house was cheaply built on a hollow wood foundation, so every footstep could be heard perfectly. The basement was shaped like a horseshoe. My bedroom had 2 doors, one on each side of the horseshoe. For 15 minutes every night, I heard this person run back and forth from one of my doors to the other. I confronted everyone in my family about it because it woke me up every night, but they all swore that it wasn't them. At the time, we had no pets because both of our cats had gotten out and never returned. We assumed they were eaten by coyotes. But all the stuff that happened in my childhood in no way compares to the story I'm about to tell you. I have no explanation for what happened and what continues to happen. When I was 19, I was a summer camp counselor. It was a college prep summer camp, so it took place on campus in the dorms, and there were night and day staff. I was night staff, meaning I made sure the kids got breakfast and dinner, ran any activities that took place at night, and had shifts staying up all night in case a kid had a late night emergency. The nights where we stayed up dragged on for hours. They were incredibly boring because I was in charge of 8th graders, a group of kids that rarely had emergencies and were too rebellious to ask for help if they needed it. One night, one of my fellow counselors came up to my floor with a Ouija board, and we decided to play around with it. This hall, we'll call it Gordon Hall, was rumored to be the place of many suicides, so we figured we'd have to at least get something out of this Ouija board. I knew I shouldn't mess around with the board, but at the time I was so bored that I would do anything. We play with the Ouija board. Nothing really comes through until we begin to say goodbye. All of a sudden, the planchette flew to the letter M, and then the letter A, and back and forth between these two until my friend, we'll call him Paul, forced a goodbye. Paul and I looked at each other afterwards and laughed. "Mama?" Paul said sarcastically. "That's really funny, Morgan. Pretty messed up to bring my mom into this." He flipped the board and stormed out. I was completely confused because it wasn't me controlling the planchette. I was also confused about why Paul reacted so extremely to the word mama. Sure, we were camp counselors together, but we weren't super close. At the time, I didn't know that Paul's mom had died in a car accident only a few months before. It was nearing 3 a.m. and Paul, the only other counselor on duty, had abandoned me. I pulled out my laptop and was just scrolling on YouTube when I found a channel called Live Sci-Fi. From what I saw, this channel mostly did live Ouija board sessions attempting to contact the Ouija board demon most commonly known by the name that starts with Z. For my own safety, I prefer not to even type the demon's name. I watched a few of the videos and realized it was 7 a.m., time to make sure the kids were up and ready for breakfast. I woke the kids up. We left Gordon to go to the dining hall. A pretty dark feeling was lingering over me, one that I hadn't felt since the last time I was at my father's house, but I brushed it off and put on my camp counselor's smile and sent the kids off to classes. 9 to 11 a.m. was usually my nap time. I went back to my room with my roommate Katie. We both put our headphones in and she fell asleep immediately. I went on YouTube and clicked the first thing that was recommended to me. It was a Ouija Board demon video. I fell asleep pretty quickly and woke up to the sound of 3 knocks on the door. I looked over at Katie's bed and she wasn't there. I figured she had locked herself out going to the bathroom or something, and I opened the door. No one was there, but my stomach dropped. Something felt really, really wrong. I have felt so much in my life. Every building I enter, I can usually tell what kind of energy is there, be it spirits or something else, but I have never felt something this dark. I closed the door and crawled back in bed. I don't know if I was asleep or awake when I heard this, but I heard the 3 knocks again, and someone outside the door yelling my name. It sounded like one of my girls, so I rushed to the door and threw it open. Again, no one was there, and I was looking at an empty hallway. I decided nap time was over and started to work on plans for activities for the kids. I chugged a Red Bull and thought nothing of it. That night, I was blessed with not having the night shift. I got in bed right after our nightly 10:30 meeting and fell asleep immediately. Katie was also not on the night duty, so we were both in the room. This part of the story has only been told to me as I was dead asleep. Katie says that around 3 a.m., I leapt out of my bed screaming my head off. I fell on the floor and was pointing at my bed screaming about a bug under my pillow. I was saying, "I know he's there! The bug is under there! I know he's there!" I was screaming and crying, and Katie got out of bed and looked under my pillow. There was nothing there. Katie grabbed my hand and led me back to my bed, showing me there was nothing there and that I was just having a nightmare. I guess I calmed down and went back to sleep. The next morning, we did our routine and got back to Gordon at 9 a.m. for nap time. I got in bed, watched another live sci-fi video, and fell asleep. I woke up 15 minutes later because it felt like my pillow was moving. I lifted it up and, I kid you not, a scorpion was crawling from behind the bed, under my pillow. The part that was so unnerving about this was that I lived in Colorado, where it is incredibly rare, if not impossible, to see a scorpion. I have lived in Colorado for 21 years and have never once seen a scorpion except for that day. Something was seriously wrong. That was the last super extreme thing to happen at camp, but since then I have suffered from nightmares every single night. At night, when I'm alone in the dark, the energy feels darker than it used to. I've always had something following me, but a close friend who practices as a medium has told me it is my grandmother watching over me. It doesn't feel like my grandmother anymore. And the craziest part is that 2 nights ago, I was coming home from work pretty late. My family locks the front door after 9, so I had to go in through the garage. I opened the garage and looked down just in time to see a flash of black run past my shoes. I turned my phone flashlight towards it, and guess what it was? A scorpion. So, about 2 years ago, my Nana brought home a Ouija board that she found at a yard sale. I have always been a true believer in the paranormal, and it's always been one of my peak interests. I have heard and read enough stories and watched enough shows to know not to mess around with a Ouija board, and quite frankly, they kind of freaked me out, so I wanted nothing to do with it. My Nana, on the other hand, doesn't believe in the paranormal whatsoever, and thought it would just be a fun game for myself, my brother, and the oldest of my 2 cousins. I left it on the dining room table for days before she made me put it away. I ended up sliding it under my bed in hopes of just forgetting about it. My brother, 11, and my cousin, 12, begged me about it constantly because they wanted to play with it and I wouldn't let them. I tried to explain to them it wasn't just a game and that it shouldn't be messed with, but they were preteen boys who couldn't help but do things they shouldn't do. One day after I got home from work, the boys were there and I had this sneaking suspicion they had played with it. I looked under my bed and it was there, but I had this odd feeling about it. That's when I went downstairs and interrogated them about it. At first, they denied it, but I saw right through them and they finally admitted that they had played with it. I asked them if they had said goodbye when they were done, and they said they did. My cousin likes to over-exaggerate stories big time and make things up and be overly dramatic, so when he told me about a couple of things that supposedly happened, I didn't believe him at all. Also, they were boys who liked to mess with each other, and I assumed that's what was happening. Anyways, a couple of nights later I got in bed, and as I lay there trying to fall asleep, I get this feeling that I'm being watched. I looked over at my closet, which has 2 sliding doors, and I noticed one of the doors is slightly opened, leaving enough small space between the doors. It creeped me out for some reason, so I turned and faced the other way, trying to ignore everything and fall asleep. I finally fell asleep, and the next thing I know, I'm woken up by what felt like someone or something hitting me in the back of my head. I was laying on my back, so the back of my head was fully on my pillow, which made it even weirder. And it wasn't a light hit either. It freaked me out so much. I was shaking. I look around my room and I don't see anything, but then all of a sudden I hear my floor creaking like someone is walking around my bed. I'm so freaked out at this point that it wasn't funny. After laying there for a good little while, I finally got the courage to get up and grab my phone and book it to my living room. I sat down and tried to calm down. I could still feel a tingling, pulsating sensation on the back of my head. I turned on my phone and realized it's 3 in the morning. I called my boyfriend, now husband, with tears streaming down my face from being so freaked out. He didn't pick up, and I swear I called him another 15 to 20 times before I finally gave up. I sat in the chair until my Nana got up around 6. I didn't tell her what happened because I knew she wouldn't believe me and would say I was acting stupid. After she got up, I had breakfast and then called my boyfriend again, and he finally picked up. He told me he had his phone on silent mode, so he didn't know I had been calling. I gave him so much crap for this, let me tell you. I told him what happened, and he felt so bad and felt like an idiot for having his phone on silent. He told me he would have come over in a heartbeat to comfort me and was so apologetic. Later that day, he came over and we took the Ouija board to a junkyard to get rid of it. My husband is the only one in my family that knows what happened, and I didn't experience anything again after I got rid of the Ouija board. Moral of the story: Ouija boards should not be messed with. So, I've always been somewhat keen to the supernatural. I definitely opened up a door when I was 18 and used the Ouija board. We were all in the backyard of my friend's house. There was about 5 of us, and one of our friends had the glow-in-the-dark board. I was terrified but intrigued. My mother is extremely religious and had always forbade me to use one. So we sat there for a few minutes asking stupid questions and not really getting any answers. But it was a couple minutes later when I could feel it. Something was there. My hands started to shake like crazy, and of course my friends started to make fun of me. But they didn't know what was going on. I started to hear a deep male's breathing in my ear. I tried to tell myself it was my friend Megan, whom was sitting next to me, but she was not close enough, nor was she breathing that hard. In my head, I just said, "Go away, go away, go away," and it eventually did. I can't explain it to this day. It was weird because as it was happening, I didn't tell anyone. I was just sitting there freaking out. As we were all heading back home, I begged my friend Megan to sleep over because I knew whatever I'd breathed into my ear was going to follow me back. I asked Megan if she had heard a male's breathing, and she was like, "What the hell? No?" and basically thought I was making it up. For the next month, I kid you not, my house was haunted. I could not sleep without the lights on and music in my ears. I would hear footsteps every night outside my door and periodically would wake at 3 a.m. After a month passed, my mother sat me down. "Ashley, what the hell is going on?" I did not tell her at all about using the board because I knew she would be furious. Nothing, Mom." "Ashley, you tell me what's going on. For the last month I've been hearing footsteps, and last night something scratched my foot." I just looked at her dumbfounded because I thought this was only affecting me. I basically broke down crying and told her everything. Together we saged the house and said prayers, and it's amazing how different the house felt. It felt lighter and pleasant again. Since then, I've been prominently more aware of ghosts. They usually come to me in my dreams, though. If you've ever wondered if Ouija boards work, they do. It might not seem like it's working, but you're literally opening a door, and they won't necessarily make themselves known on the board. Hey guys, glad to see you made it to the end of the video. Have you ever messed around with the Ouija board? Make sure to let me know in the comments below. If you have any requests for future videos, be sure to let me know and I'll do my best to work them into future content. Alright guys, that just about wraps up the video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So long, Fear Seekers. I'll see you in the next video.